Hello everyone, this is Fire Chief Paul Dow with Albuquerque Fire Rescue. This podcast is designed to bring you helpful training and best practices and some additional resources that you can access from anywhere. So thank you for joining us and enjoy today's episode.
Bomber 2, Engine 2, Engine 4, Engine 6, Ladder 4, Ladder 1, Rescue 19, Rescue 2, Squad 3, Battalion 1, Battalion 2, and Squad 2, 4, 225, Co-Drive Northeast, 13 Firebox 8122, 69 Echo 6 S is going to be S. Caller states that there is smoke coming from all parts of the home. Engine 2, Engine 4, Engine 6, Ladder 4, Ladder 1, Rescue 19, Rescue 2, Squad 3, Battalion 1, Battalion 2, Squad 2, 4, 225, Co-Drive Northeast, 69 606X. All units respond. Attack 1 acknowledge.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody. Another episode of the AFR podcast. Today we're going to do this one out of Station 4. So I'm joined by some of the other officers here today. I got Jason Fejer with me, who's been on before. We got Joe Lopez, who was on the Ventilation podcast, but Lieutenant Miguel Tittman, this is his first appearance on the podcast. So welcome. How you doing today?
Thank you, Captain West. I appreciate the time and happy to be here.
All right. So you were an instructor up at the academy, just crushing us nonstop. What was that time like for you up there?
Time at the academy is really great. It's probably the best duty that I've ever had. You don't learn more than when you're teaching. So teaching really helped me learn a lot about this fire service and bringing practical stuff out to the field. And I think it really completes a firefighter to actually teach what they know and then go apply it to their experience as well.
Nice. How about for testing and everything? Was it helpful? Were you guys in the books pretty good up there? Or?
No, not really. I think testing really just comes down to some people are good test takers, or actually some people are good at absorbing material and recalling that material, and some people aren't. I was in depth into the material, and I still am an average test taker, so I'm not sure it really helped me, but it definitely helped in my knowledge of the fire service and of firefighting.
Yeah. What about seeing people out there that you've trained? How's that?
Well, I think it's great, man. For yourself, for example, seeing you climb the ranks as a captain, and Lieutenant Fejer as well, who we now work together at the same station, and we talk about fires that we've been on together a lot, and a lot of my cadets have climbed the ranks, and it's just great to see all the great people out there.
Yeah. You ever have anybody trembling in fear still?
No, I don't think so. I think after a certain while, people understand what the intention of cadet life was for, and I always say that if you were somewhat scared of me, then I at least did my job somewhat well. So
there you go. All right. So today we're going to be talking about single-family dwellings. The idea behind this is we're going to try to get into the SOG's Volume 5, 5-2, it's incident-specific guidelines. So today we're going to be talking about single-family dwellings. And Jason, I guess since you worked up at the alarm room, we'll get into just the dispatch of those. What units are we going to get on a single-family structure fire, and what are some of the nuances behind those dispatches?
69 Delta 6S and Echo 6S are going to get you 3 engines, 1 ladder, 2 battalion chiefs, 2 rescues, which was a pretty recent addition. There was a while there we were only getting 1 rescue on a single family. And then, of course, you're going to get 1 squad. Probably the most important thing about knowing what units are coming with you is if you do arrive to, say, a 2-story and it was dispatched as a single, to recognize that and to understand that call for a balance to get that additional ladder, 7-8, and squad 2 en route.
Okay, so multi-story structure, those are the 3 extra units you get?
Yes, so a 69 Delta and 69 Echo 6S is a single story. When they change it to a M, that'll be a multi-story, and that's when you get the 3 additional units. So you get 12 instead of 9. And
you guys get a decent amount of fires over here at 4, so I guess I'll start with you again, and then we'll pitch it over to Joe. I'll start with your size up, and then I'll pitch it to him on what he's thinking when he hears you sizing it up. But as you're pulling up on scene, what are you thinking about? We practice a lot of size up training. You want to have it perfect blue card. So what are you thinking about as you're pulling up to this fire?
There's nothing I don't think more exciting than taking command of a working fire. So it's something I practice, and that starts from, even going all the way back to being a driver, or a firefighter. It's hard a little bit when you're in the back seat, but starting to paying attention to what the officer says. Then going to the alarm room, I got to listen to a lot of size ups, and you hear the good ones and the bad ones, and some that might not even hit all the points. As long as you paint the picture for that incoming chief, I think you've done your job. I've been lucky here. We've had a lot of working fires, and I've been lucky enough to take command on them. I request all the audio on my fires, so I've listened to a lot of my size ups, and some are better than others. Some I hit everything and they come out just the way I want to. Other times I've had some where I'm struggling to find the words, and kind of take a deep breath, think about what you need to do, what you got in front of you, and just try to express where we're going to start. And usually we're lucky at FORS having a battalion chief here. I don't have to usually have command long. It's not always the case, but all I got to do is kind of set the plate, and then these guys usually come in and help us finish it off.
So we're going to take a break real quick. We're going to play some size ups for you out there, and then we'll talk about it.
Engine 3 is on scene of a medium two-story residential house. We have smoke coming from appears to be the garage. Engine 3 will be going across there for fire control in the up-engine strategy. Engine 3 has code command. All incoming units continuing in code 3. Man, all assigned units with a follow-up. We have no indication of a basement. We're still entering to the alpha side for fire control. We're working in a low rescue profile due to homeowners stating everyone is out of occupancy at this time. Engine 11 is on scene of a single-story commercial structure. We have heavy smoke showing from 4 sides of the structure. Engine 11 will be stretching a line for search and fire control. Operating the opposite strategy on the outside of the structure. Engine 11 has Ortiz command. 513 following. Battalion 1 copies. Engine 11 is on scene. Single-story structure with smoke showing. Engine 11 is going in for search and fire control. Engine 11 has Ortiz command. All units continue go through. Command to all incoming units. It looks like this is going to be an abandoned structure. 360 complete. No indications of a basement. Engine 11 still operating the opposite strategy. This will be a low life safety profile.
All right, so there are a couple real-world examples of size ups. So Joe, I'm going to pitch this to you as you've been upgrading, going around as a upgraded battalion chief. Have you been in any fires where the size up wasn't textbook, and how do you deal with that, when you hear it on the radio and then you finally show up to see what you're dealing with?
Yeah, we have, we're fortunate now we have a professional development program that I think has helped our guys a ton, be a little more prepared. The guys don't just have to practice on their own. They're kind of taught in the lieutenants and the captain's shirts how to do some really good size ups that set the tone for a good operation. But you have to understand also that we have sometimes people upgrading that are newer in the department and don't have a ton of experience, and that excitement, kind of catches up to them sometimes. So they'll occasionally, forget some information or some important information that normally they would do, but in the excitement of the moment maybe forgot it. So just like anything else that we do, we look out for each other. If it's an area that we may know, and we know it's a single story, we'll fill that information in and give them the opportunity, or maybe cue them to let us know, is it a single story or 2-story, or somehow give them some information so they can update us.
I think that's been my experience before. I think one time I gave this trash size up, and then battalion chief came on the radio and parroted it back like a perfect size up. Oh yeah, that's what I said.
Sure.
That's right, chief.
That's all it is just looking out for each other, making sure we're on the same page, because we all want the same thing. We all want it to go smooth, and we look out for each other. So it's not usually a big deal, and sometimes after the fact we'll talk about it if somebody was having difficulty. But usually what it comes down to is just in the moment, maybe their first size up on the radio, and they just happen to be a little bit nervous. We try to calm them down by giving them some information or cueing them to saying the right thing, and then we move on.
All right, Miguel, so I'm going to go over to you. We're talking about the initial strategy. If you're rolling up on an engine, what are you thinking about after you give the size up, but during that size up, you're going to say your initial strategy, whether you're going to be offensive, defensive, what are your initial actions going to be? So what are you thinking about as you're making that decision?
Well, first of all, I'm a ladder officer, but I do think about size ups quite often, and Lieutenant Fejer and myself talk about size ups, whether they're good or bad, and we kind of analyze them every time we have the opportunity to. But as a fire officer, you're thinking about as much as you possibly can when you're rolling up to any kind of house that's on fire. Obviously, you're thinking about life safety first. You're thinking about, is there potential lives in there? Do we need to make a quick entry and a quick search? So that life safety, incident stabilization, that lip, that's one of the things you're thinking about as you first roll up. But really, you're thinking about everything. You're thinking about the construction. You're thinking about the smoke. You're thinking about where the fire might be, the potential for a rain roof. But pretty much your priority is always going to be life safety.
Okay. Have you ever, not just as an officer, but all the way throughout your career, rolled up some fires that you thought were booming pretty good, that you thought they were going to be defensive, and you guys ended up going in and taking care of business? Or
yeah, absolutely. Sometimes things aren't as they appear. Pretty much every single fire, there's going to be some things that are thrown at you that you thought were one way and weren't. So really, you size up and you get an idea of what the fire looks like, what the smoke looks like, and you can kind of dictate or get an idea of how hot the fire might be based on the smoke. But really, not until you get to the front door and you make entry can you really feel the heat of that fire and whether you can actually make entry. And that's when you might first get the idea, okay, if we can't go in because it's too hot, then we might start thinking about defensive. But at the same time, we're also doing a 360. If you haven't done it yourself, someone else is doing it. And we're teaching now that to get that 360 done right away, so you have an idea of what's going on all four sides of the structure. Because initially, we didn't talk about this before, but when you're rolling up, we talk about this with our drivers a lot, Lieutenant Fejer, that we pull past the building so we can see at least three sides. That way we have a better idea of what's going on from all the ventilation openings on three sides of the building. So really it's just to get an idea of the potential of the fire behavior, how hot it is, whether we can make entry, and who's potentially in there to go after.
And Jason, you had a story you were telling me earlier before we started this about you pulled up on a fire you thought for sure defensive. Tell that story for us.
Yeah, that was my first due on Engine 3, and Paul Dow was lieutenant, and Rob Sanchez was the chief. He was the first to arrive and declared an offensive working fire. And I remember pulling up, and there's fire shooting out of both sides of the small apartment, and I was like, I'm not going in there. Once we got the line stretched, and as soon as we got water on the fire, we were very quickly able to make entry and knock the fire out. It was essentially two rooms, so almost like going back to what Miguel was just saying, that what I thought we had wasn't near as bad as what it actually was. It was just a contents fire that was venting out of two different sides. So it didn't take much water to get the fire under control. The search was very quick. But my first, good working fire, it looked, terrifying until you get water on the fire, which makes things better very quickly. We didn't have to search for it. Front door was already open. All things looking back, it was actually a very easy fire to put out.
Thinking about a big fire like that. So if we're moving to,
can I say something about what these guys were just talking about? It's funny that you say that about, we've all been to that fire where like, man, I don't know, like I think this thing's gonna burn to the ground, and Miguel mentioned it earlier that until you get to that front door and you open the hand line up and start darkening some fire down, like that's the point I think when most of my fires, unless it just looks structurally unstable from the street, like until we made access to the front door, maybe flowed the line onto some active fire that we saw, that's I think how quickly it changes to getting better, that sometimes determines for us. I know most of my fires on the pumper, that's when I made the decision. Like if we're not making any headway on this and we're flowing directly to the seat of the fire and it's still blowing out both sides, 2 windows, then we start thinking about readjusting our tactics. But a lot of times until you make entry to that front door with the structurally stable building, you know, we're thinking offensive, right? Because we have to give the people that are inside at least a chance.
And unless you know, really the majority of the time we really don't know what our rescue profile is. You know, most of the time we have reports that people have gotten out. That's just the most times than not. Sometimes we don't know any information where we have to go check, where we have to at least go, even if it looks bad, we got to go check. So rarely do we have a known rescue profile, and if that's the case, then yeah, we're gonna go do whatever we can to get in that building. But you know, like Joe said, sometimes it just takes getting in there and feeling it and seeing it and putting some water on it to see what how it's gonna react to.
All right. Hey guys, we're going to get into the rescue profile in just a second. Real quick before we do that, again, this is all the initial strategy. So as you're pulling up, after you do your size up, you know, usually in your size up, you're going to say you're going to pull a cross lay or pull a blitz line. What would you have to see on a single family dwelling to pull a blitz line or 2.5 inch line?
A lot of fire. I think a self-vented garage fire with the door open is an easy one to make that call, just with the fire load of maybe 2 vehicles inside that are involved, the highly flammable contents that are usually in a garage. That's one. To make an interior attack on a single family dwelling, it's going to have to be, I don't even know how I would actually define that, but just a lot of fire. Yeah. And it's not usually one of the first lines that I consider, said unless it's possibly a garage fire. But to make an interior attack on a single family with a 2.5, if that's where we're going, that's one of those fires you want to kind of pump the brakes on, see where we're at. What do we know about it? Is there somebody in there? And is, you know, pulling a 2.5 going to make it better, or is it going to slow us down? Mm-hmm. So those are all considerations, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to it. One thing to think about too, though, is pulling that blitz is if we're on tank water, that also reduces our amount of time and where's our next pumper at. So that's also a consideration. If we didn't establish our own water supply, you better know who's running with you, and that goes back to knowing those run strings and looking at that dispatch when you get it. Just because we're here at 4s and I think 6s and 10s are coming with me, if one of them's on a call, I might be getting engine 2, engine 13, or even engine 3. So those are all considerations that have to be thought about when you're deploying a line or choosing what line you want your guys to pull.
I think sometimes a consideration of the maneuverability and the speed that we can get a hand line in place, an 1 3/4 for most residential fires. Even if we got a pretty significant amount of fire, a lot of times it's enough to get inside, get to the seat of the fire where we can at least stop the forward progress of it, where we can get a search, and then at that time hopefully we catch the water supply by the next in pumper, or even that driver hand jacks if he's able to do that, and we pull a backup line. You know, so the speed and maneuverability of cutting the fire off, I think, is huge. And I think, you know, and I pulled 2.5s into houses, and it has not necessarily always gone the best. And sometimes you think the maneuverability and the quickness of an 1 3/4 kind of, it works a little bit better than that 2.5.
Yeah, the majority of the time it's going to be 1 3/4, but there are scenarios for every. You know, we could think about some of the fires we had. I mean, it wasn't our first line on that last fire we had, but we did pull a 2.5 inch line. But if you're talking about an initial line from a pumper, majority of the time it's going to be 1 3/4. Sometimes you might have a long lay where you might think about a 2.5 inch, where it's a big yard in some of the areas in Albuquerque, or a long driveway where you might want to lay that 2.5 and maybe put a Y on it, so for lines down further down range.
All right, so we're all learning about Blue Card now. It's been taught to us, and now we're just working on, you know, getting it down, getting the terminology down. But one of the things that's going on with that is the follow-up report. So, you know, on that follow-up report for Blue Card, we're going to do, you know, say 360 was complete or not complete. We're going to be looking if there's a basement, and then they want a information about the rescue profile at this structure. So we'll get into the rescue profile a little bit. Can you guys talk about different rescue profiles that we're going to encounter?
Well, for bread and butter, I mean, like, if we're talking about the majority of our fires are at night, and where we are at, if we're talking about residential fires, if we're at night and we're residential, we're thinking it's an occupied structure. So we're talking about a high rescue profile. Unless we get information that everybody's out by somebody that's on scene, we're going in high rescue profile.
All right. And Jason, what's going to upgrade that to urgent rescue profile?
Is a known. We had one right down here on Towner where the roommate was in the front yard telling us the other roommate hasn't come out yet. So Miguel was on that fire. I assigned Ladder 4, and you were on that fire too, Rescue 4, to come interior with us to help search. Turns out the guy wasn't in there, he was gone. But yeah, I mean, that's an urgent. The guy in the front yard telling us there is someone inside.
Just a random couch in the way of a bed.
Yes, yep, that was the fire.
And another one to think about is that one that in 15s that we went on. That's an urgent rescue profile when they're saying there's kids in there. That was the one that was on the news when they dropped the kids out of the window to the roofers next door. But that's an urgent rescue profile when we had to actually do some vent inner search.
Okay, so that's a urgent rescue profile is going to be a known. Now, what about a low rescue profile? Is that just going to be a boarded up house, abandoned structure?
So we get, different parts of the city, and it's district familiarization, I think, that we talk about, and I think the guys in this room understand that a vacant house, a lot of times is vacant, but it can also has the potential to have squatters. This area, as well as my area that I'm pretty familiar up there in the Southeast Heights, we have a ton of vacant structures. So a low rescue profile, I go back and forth with this one, and we kind of came to the conclusion that if I have the ability to safely make an offensive attack on a vacant house, and I know or believe that I've seen squatters in there, or there's signs of somebody that could possibly be in there, then we go until it's deemed unsafe for us to be in there. But like we said earlier, we got to give people a chance to be saved. The fire started somehow, and there's these vacant houses. A lot of times there's not electricity, or there's not power. There's not electricity and there's not gas. So how did it start? And these guys, sometimes these squatters, they'll find creative ways to get into houses, and just because we don't see their openings doesn't mean that they can't be in there. And we've gone to quite a few that, sure enough, we do find somebody in there, or they're sleeping close to the door, or they were trying to get out, and we just have to give people a chance. So the low rescue profile for me is, especially with vacant homes, as long as it's safe for us to operate inside and get a quick search, we'll do that. And then after that, then we'll determine the risk benefit, and we'll back out if we need to. But we need to give people the chance to be rescued in those vacant structures.
And we talk about low rescue profile. We used to say a lot that in commercial structures it's at night because there's people don't work at night, and in residentials it's during the day. But I think with the non-traditional way that people make money these days, and the lengths that people go to educate their children sometimes at home, there's really no such thing as a low profile in terms of residential, especially.
All right, so I want to get into line placement. Again, this is following the SOG 5-2-02 single family dwelling. So Jason, I want to talk about line placement, and if you've got a fire you can see, a working fire coming from one of the bedrooms, tell me about line placement and how you're going to make that happen, attacking that fire.
Well, this goes all back to training, which is something I believe in, and we drill all the time on getting that first line in service. It's so important to get a line deployed quickly, get it charged, and get it in operation as quickly as possible, which goes along with forcible entry, apparatus placement, and a lot of these other moving parts. So if we can get all those things together, it makes that end result so much easier. If everyone's versed in where that truck should be placed, how to get into a house, and how we're going to deploy that line, getting in through the front door and just getting that initial line in service is is paramount. And generally, I mean, depending on where the fire is, and this is all situational dependent, but I do prefer to try to go in through the alpha side if possible. It's the door that's most commonly used. It's going to give us the best access to the most of the house. And that's where I'd prefer to stretch that line like we were talking earlier. Generally that's going to be an 1 3/4 cross lay.
All right. So as you're going through that door, do you ever open it up and you're like, holy crap, that's hot?
It was actually the house that Miguel used to live in. It was a 2nd-story apartment. We went in that one, and when they popped the door, it was hot. And I think I made a left, and I should have made a right, when we first went in. So it was one of those ones that's, this is kind of hot. I haven't found it yet. And then as soon as we made the right corner, to see the fires right there, and we put it out. But yes, it was hot, and not finding it right away. Those are the scary ones, the ones we were talking about earlier, where there's fire blowing out the front window and we know exactly where it is. That makes my job a whole lot easier. But when all you got is smoke pushing out of several openings, and you pop that front door and you get that rush of heat, those are the ones that are a little unnerving. But with the tick, those are all tools we have. Instead of having that line ready to go, as soon as forcible entry is done, all that's got to happen rapidly. If not, door control is also, it's another basic that if we don't have that line quite there yet, or one pipeman's forced an entry while we're still stretching, maintain that door control until we have that line in service and ready to go. And as we make entry, those are calls that we got to make, and safety is the goal for both the people we're trying to find and the crew. So we always have to balance those two things too.
Yeah. How has transitional attacks been working since we implemented that?
I haven't had a lot of experience personally with it. I know people have to varying degrees of success, and I think that goes back to what exactly we're talking about here. As long as that transitional attack doesn't delay getting that first line in service, or if we can put that water on the fire without delaying making entry, if that is the first line, then I've heard great things. I've read all the studies that getting water on fire as quickly as possible is the goal. If that's putting water on the fires, we're going by the window to the front door, by all means. I know we've all had different experiences with transitional attack. I personally have not had a fire that's, I've had a chance to make an effective transitional attack on.
How about you, Joe? I think I heard you talk about it before. You got any good stories for us?
Yeah, we've tried a couple transitional attacks, and the way that it's worked for us, luckily, like Jay and these guys do at fours, they train a lot. So stretching line is a kind of an afterthought because, the guys are usually really, really good at it and they're really quick. So it gives you the chance to change up your tactics just a little bit, where you can stretch an 1 3/4 or relocate it pretty quickly. We had one, I think we were talking about it a couple weeks ago. I'm a very stubborn when it comes to some things, and it's hard for me to see things when we've been doing it for so long, and transitional attack went totally against what we were taught for years. And we saw it the first time I saw it in play, and I think I mentioned it to you. A man survived hiding in a bathroom right outside the bedroom that was on fire, and he never would have been able to get out had we not done a transitional attack. And obviously he didn't burn. He was protected by the door, but it didn't push fire like we were always taught. So until I saw that, and we did a tailboard after, and I think a couple of deputy chiefs showed up, and because they happened to be in the area, and I made a point to say to all the guys that we're thinking about it like I was. There's your proof right there. You can do some really good things with transitional attack. So think of that as another tactic instead of being stubborn and saying, well, we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. When our tactics can evolve and we have proof to show that it can work, it's time to give it a chance.
All right. So that's the line placement. You're saying that normal structure fire, you're going to try to make entry through the alpha side, pull an 1 3/4 line. Now, what if it's a garage fire that's also laid out in our SOGs? This one, let's say it's a garage fire and it's got an open garage door.
Miguel was also on a fire with me that we were first due on down on Los Arboles, and it was a vehicle inside a garage. It was fully involved. Garage door was halfway open and halfway had already collapsed on one side. We stretched 1 3/4 inch, and same thing. It was a lot of fire, and there was a lot involved. We stretched the first line to the open garage door. Engine 10 arrived shortly after us. They pulled our second line and went interior with it, and it worked perfectly. There was just a little bit of extension into the dividing laundry room in between the garage and the house, and that was a big fire. It was partial collapse of the garage, but the actual structure was saved, and they've since rebuilt it. And with the garage door open, it's so quick to especially stretch. You have a driveway right there that there's no, generally no obstacles unless it might be another car, but it makes for an easy stretch. The garage door's open. We can get water on the fire very, very quickly.
Miguel and Joe being on the ladder for a lot of years, if you've got thinking about ventilation on a garage fire, you've got more exposed structural members. How do you think about if you're trying to do ventilation on those?
Well, every case is different, obviously, but if you have a fire that's going on in the garage, obviously the first thing you want to do is get water on the fire. But every single opening, every single window, every single door is a potential ventilation. So first thing I'm thinking about is windows and doors, making sure we can get door control. That way we don't have spread of the fire. But getting water on the fire first thing is most important.
What about you, Joe? Any thoughts, second thoughts maybe about getting up on that roof?
If it's a garage fire and there's a car inside, I very rarely have been to a car fire in a garage. There are a lot of times the trusses are exposed. They're not finished garages. The stability of that roof is usually not very safe in my experience. But talking about ventilation, at that point, we want to support what the engine's doing, what the search is doing. A lot of times, if the garage door's closed and they have to go through the house, through the interior door from the kitchen or the laundry room or whatever it is, a lot of times we'll support them by giving all that pressure that's building up in that garage by cutting garage doors, because there's a lot of times there's not windows or exterior doors. A lot of times it's a good chance for us, once the pumper gets a hand line in place inside the house, and if we're fortunate enough to cut the door pretty quickly, the door's shut into the house and it's not extending into the house, they can keep that hand line in place. We can cut a door, and the backup line, can darken the fire down before they open that door into the house. That way, the rescues can search in a tenable atmosphere. The guys are not fumbling around trying to find that door. They just keep that door shut. We make a nice cut for them, maybe extend it after the garage line is in place and they're darkening the fire down, maybe extend our cuts a little bit and make it a little safer. But that's usually our priority, I think, for garage fires from a ladder perspective. And then, we work on venting out the rest of the house after the fact, after the search and the fire's knocked down.
I got a quick story on a garage fire, and this actually goes back to the initial size up and being an officer on a first two engine, and an inexperienced one for that. At that, I was an upgraded lieutenant. I was actually doing a trade for Jared Baldwin at 16s, and we talked a little bit about the difference in the districts of Albuquerque. You're going to have, like here at Station 4, we're all running together. Engine 4, Rescue 4, Ladder 4, Battalion 1's probably going to be first on scene. At 16s is a little different because it's just an engine and a rescue house. And on a particular call, we opened up the bay doors and you could see a plume of smoke. It looked like you could touch it. It was like 2 blocks away, but it was a garage door, and I knew that we were going to be on scene for a while, and which we were. So I did my size up, and I probably, I messed a couple things up because, like I said, I was an upgraded lieutenant, but I was mobile command for quite a long time because Battalion 3 was coming from a meeting in Battalion 1, and I really wish I would have just knocked this fire down real quick because the garage door was about 4 feet off the ground, and we probably could have hit it and knocked it down. I didn't. We made entry. I had to I pretty much ran mobile command from interior, which it worked out. But on that particular fire, Ladder 15, which happened to be Deputy Chief Fejer, did get on the roof and did cut a hole, and it did work in terms of ventilation very, very well. And we were able to cut off the fire from spreading to the rest of the house through that tactic. But that goes back into the area familiarization that every district's different. You're going to have, sometimes battalion's going to be right on your butt or beating you to a fire. On Ladder 4 here, I rarely get to do a size up where, in different districts, you get to do lots of size ups. So
Well, that's, I think, another point on garage fires while we're talking about them. If you do have that garage fire with the open door, I think something everyone has to consider is if that door is still hanging from the roof and there's a lot of fire involvement, don't get underneath it. And that's when a lot of times we're best off making access through the house. We can do all of our fire suppression from the driveway, but when we start, trying to affect that primary or get into that back side of the garage, don't get under that door. At some point it's going to come down, or it's up to us to bring it down before anyone starts operating in that garage.
I'm glad our SOGs addressed that. They, darken the fire down from the exterior, send a second line into the house, protect any extension into the house, and then you can fight the fire. Once it's darkened down, then you can overhaul hydraulically with that second line and the first line, because you're right, there's a ton of potential for some major hazards in those garages.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about a two-story house with a fire in the garage. So how's the line placement going to change up on that one?
Door open or door closed?
Let's say doors closed.
So door closed, we're going to stretch interior just like we would on a single story. But then we're going to also need to get a second line above the fire or to the second floor, depending on the layout. Some garages have no occupied space or even attic space above the garage, but if there is livable space, attic space, we need to make sure we get up there to check all that area above the fire.
All right. And then what about a third line?
Third line will be if we do have a crew that goes upstairs, a third line will protect the stairwell.
All right, we're going to move into basement fires. So we talked about garage fires, moving into basement fires. That's been a point of emphasis, actually. So it's included in our follow-up report, whether there's a basement or not. And I think the reason behind that, there's this Project Mayday study where they analyzed all the Maydays, or some 50,000 Maydays. And a lot of these Maydays occur when somebody falls through the first floor into the basement. Miguel, can you talk a little bit about the importance of doing that 360?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about basements is recognition, recognizing that there is a basement, and that all goes back to that 360 from the initial officer that gets on scene while their crew is pulling that first line is getting that better size up of that building, and finding out whether there is a basement, and even sometimes not just a basement, but if it's a split level house and you can't necessarily see from the alpha side that there's another level below grade until you actually do that 360 and go around and see it for yourself, and recognize that is a split level or a basement, and just having that in your size up in your follow-up report, that way everybody on the fire ground knows of that potential hazard. It's important.
And Jason, getting into the tactics, what's important to know about fighting a fire in the basement?
What's important to know is that it's not something we do a lot, and it's also something that's super dangerous. Just limited egress, especially if something goes bad, that we might be limited to just that staircase that we've made entry on. Like Miguel had just said, if it's a walkout, it's a whole different scenario. If there is some windows that we might have access to, that's a whole nother thing, because we still have to figure out a way to get up to those windows. So they're not going to be at the general height that a normal window would be on a first story of a building. So it's all those variables, that there's not just one type of basement that we can expect. You never know what you're going to get. So I think going all the way back to getting that line in service quickly is going to be the best advantage that we have. The quicker we can get water to that fire, the better everything's going to get. I know we had talked about it earlier that solid smooth bores are the preferred nozzle. I don't personally have experience with it, but on Engine 4 we do have that. We have one TFT on a cross lane. We do have one solid. The 2.5, of course, we have a solid on also. So those are all options, and moving forward, the more familiar we get with basement fires and tactics and training on some of these things, this is going to be kind of a work in process to see what is going to work better in some situations than others. And I don't think there's any way to really determine that, to just get out and train on it, study up on it, and get feedback from people as we do start experiencing some of these fires, because we don't hear about a lot of them. We don't run on a lot of them. So
I think another thing to recognize is the majority of basements are one way in, one way out. So there's one stairwell to go in and come out. So if we are going to have to go down for a rescue profile that's higher or a known life hazard down there, we have to have a line going in, but we also have to protect that stairwell with the backup line. So I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, that's the other thing that it's probably so obvious that nobody else is mentioning it, but you know, if there's a fire in the basement, you're going down a stairwell, you're going down through all that heat and everything.
It's a flow path is what it is.
Right.
It's a chimney that you have to, you know, if you have to, we don't want to, but if you have to, yeah, it's definitely a flow path.
And you have to go through it and get under it to fight the fire. Like, I think that knowing these vent limited fires and the type of atmosphere we're either gonna have a heavily involved fire in the basement, or we're gonna have a vent limited because it's starved of oxygen, and we open that little chimney that we're talking about, the little staircase that goes down. You know, we're looking at some very potentially dangerous situations. I think the first thing we have to do is recognize that we have a basement, and then second thing is understand the different tactics that we have at our disposal to cool that atmosphere before we make entry down there. And that's something that's pretty new to us. Again, it's something we were taught never to do, but if we have the ability from an exterior window, if we do recognize that it's a basement, to cool the atmosphere, to do that, to make it safe for us to relocate or take the second line in into a more tenable atmosphere. But we need to control the oxygen going in, the air going in, because that first forcible entry down into the basement, that's going to be our first vent opening. So we have alternatives. It's no longer the only alternative is to suck it up, get down below the fire, below the heat level, you know, duck walking on the basement floor till you reach the seat of the fire. I think we have options now, and I think they have so many maydays because it has the potential to change very quickly.
If you read the line of duty deaths at the reports, like I know all of us do, you know, you've seen numerous ones where firefighters get caught in those flow paths that are right at the top of a stairwell, where that chimney effect goes into, which I think is another important thing to note is you know, the old way of firefighting. I think some of us can probably name some guys at old Station 5 that made it a habit to just break windows on arrival, and I think it's really, really important for you know, the modern day firefighter to recognize that you are creating flow paths when you open ventilation holes by windows. And if it's a basement fire and there's a window there, and like you said, it's starving of oxygen, it's a vent limited fire, and you take that window, then you might just, you know, make that mixture perfect enough to create combustion and create that chimney into the stairwell. So you really have to be aware of what you're doing on the fire ground.
And you can cut this out if you want, but you know, not to be too long-winded, but I was involved with the basement fire with the crew that I totally respect and I learned a ton from, and some of them are still around, still doing really good things. They didn't recognize a basement at a fire that we had, you know, between 13s and 5s, and they were first on, and they stretched in and they saw, you know, a working fire on the first floor of a single story, and they thought, we got this, you know, and they happened to swing the front door open, which blocked a hallway that was showing fire from the basement, but it blocked their view of this fire, and they just went in. They couldn't find it. You know, the very experienced crew, they were like, this floor is getting spongy. I don't know what's going on. We back out, and right about then we're arriving from 5s, and we see fire blow through the roof and through the basement and out front windows, and they had just happened to back up, and they swear to this day that the only thing holding them up was some carpet. You know, so recognizing that we have a basement is huge, because I guarantee you, with the knowledge that this crew had and the experience, they would have done it a little bit differently. But, you know, so the emphasis on that 360 is huge. And in their defense, the, you know, the basement, the hatch door on the back was blocked by, they had overgrown trees because they didn't like the look of the hatch doors, so they landscaped around it, you know. But, you know, look in the detail. Don't just walk around the structure, say I did a 360. Walk around the structure to do a 360 so we gather information and be diligent about what you look for.
And those are the ones too, like I mentioned earlier, if we have fire showing from a room or from multiple rooms, that makes our job much easier. It's those ones where we can't find it. Where is it coming from? It's hot, you know, where is it at? And those are the ones where, you know, all that stuff better start registering that Was there a 360? Did we see the Charlie side? Is there a basement?
And I think it's easy to get complacent, and I'm guilty of it, because we're in a district where we have a lot of older homes in our district, so we know to be aware of potential for basements. Where if you work at station, on the west side, and the homes are all built after 2000, you don't see a whole bunch of basements. But that doesn't mean that they're not there, because a friend of mine told me that they blasted out using dynamite to make a basement just recently for a house. So they're out there, So we really have to be extra aware and doing our 360s to locate this potential.
All right, so we're going to move on. Miguel, I wanted to ask you about attic fires. So that's covered in this SOG as well, but being on the ladder, you got any experience with attic fires and some of the challenges that come with having to put those out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say probably the majority of the fires that I've been to have been attic fires, and I think the biggest thing, like you said, I'm on a ladder, so we're rarely there first, and it's usually the engine there. And the biggest thing is recognizing it's in the attic, and that's going to take some aggressive pulling the ceiling. So once again, depending on where you're at in the city, if you're in the old homes in downtown, like where we're at, you might get some metal lath. It's kind of going to be hard to pull some ceiling. Where if you're pulling ceiling through gyprock, it's fairly easy, but you got to locate it, and then you have to have a coordinated attack between your ladder and your engine. So communications is key. We've done it multiple times where I've gone interior with Jason, and we've both pulled ceiling. On this last fire, we went interior, and there was significant fire on the Charlie side, and we saw it. We knew there was fire. We figured it was a Rubin Contents fire, so we went interior. Couldn't find it. Pulled ceiling. Eventually found it. Went outside, got on the roof, and put it out fairly easily. So sometimes it takes just a little bit of digging, and usually they're really, really stubborn. Sometimes you have to. I've been on really, really stubborn ones where we've had to actually open up the side of the pitch where there's a ventilation. Scuppers we've used all kinds of the ventilation, the natural ventilation of the building. You can use whatever's to the house offers you, but yeah, they can be stubborn. We have the piercing nozzles now that we can use. We've got lots of different tools at our disposal. But usually the most important thing I would say is a coordinated attack between your engine and your ladder. That if you're doing it together and you find out where it's at and have that coordination and that good communication, it's going to be key.
All right, there are a couple other things in this SOG. So Chimney Fire, Jason, what's the textbook answer for this?
Textbook
Chimney
is
fire?
dry chem up the chimney.
What happens if you use a
You
hose?
can crack the flue that could go on unnoticed and cause carbon monoxide. And the few chimney fires that I've been on have just been extensive overhaul. It's usually just a little fire that got out of the flue, and it starts running in whatever void space is out, and we end up tearing up a lot of stuff to usually find a little bit of fire. So that's generally my experience, is it's just a lot of overhaul. So probably salvage is one of the biggest things on that, because we're in somebody's home. There might not be a lot of involvement, but we're going to make a mess, just dealing with the chimney itself.
One thing I'll say about chimney fires that I'd like to mention is that if you go to a chimney fire, what you is dispatched, because a lot of times you'll be dispatched to a possible chimney fire. If you see smoke, because when you light a fire at your house, you have smoke come out the chimney flue. That's it. So you show up to these fires and you see smoke coming from anywhere besides a chimney flue, you must be prepared for void space fires, either in the walls or the attic. And I think sometimes we get complacent. Well, maybe the smoke's backing up. It should never be coming from anywhere except the flue. And if you see it coming out from a vent, a gable vent, or some vent on the roof or the eaves or anything like that, you have to immediately be much more aggressive at that point. And we all have ticks now, which is great. Be much more aggressive than we normally would for a chimney fire that we're going to put out with the dry chem. So if you see smoke anywhere besides that flue, be aggressive. Don't be afraid to get in there with the tick and call the ladder and say, hey, come in with us with your pike poles and help us open this up a little bit. Better to apologize for a couple of pieces of sheetrock and put the fire out like that than to burn an entire house down because we were afraid to open stuff up.
Another thing we haven't really mentioned yet, which goes into a fire officer size up, is is the color of the smoke and reading smoke. So, if you go to a fire, what comes into the chimney fire, and you got brown smoke coming out, like he said, one of the ventilations, then you might have an attic fire, because it might be, it might have involved some of the structural members of the trusses in that attic. So reading smoke is going to be key to all this.
Awesome. And Joe and I talked about smoke in the ventilation podcast, so we'll shy away from it a little bit on this episode, but if you're interested, go back and check out that ventilation podcast. So there's a couple other things in this SOG. Talks about doing search, being on the rescue. If I happen to be the first rescue there, then most of the time we're going to get assigned search. So I guess my first lesson to the rescues out there is, get in there quickly, right? You don't want to have like 5 minutes of reflex time and the fire's already out. You get assigned search, and then 10 minutes later you're like, oh, clear, and the fire's been out for like 5 minutes already. So be ready to go, have your stuff ready. Some other things it talks about in here is you want to start at the fire and move away, which I think most of the time I wasn't doing. So, again, start at the fire, move away, the most dangerous to the least dangerous. And then if you're having to go up to the second floor, you want to start as soon as you get to that floor. Another thing about going up to the second floor is if there's no hose line up there, bring a water can with you. And one more thing that I wanted to emphasize, again, the primary search is going to be fast. I think it says like 10 to 15 seconds per room. So a lot of times I think when I'm doing search, I'm trying to be a lot more thorough than that. I'm definitely taking longer per room. So I think I'm being a little more thorough than a primary should be. So again, get in there quick, get that primary done quick. And that's my only thoughts on the search. You guys got any?
I got some on search. I mean, since we're talking about size ups and we're talking about officers and different levels of or different experiences of officers, I think it's important, especially we talk about in professional development a lot, and I used to teach. But there's no perfect instance. There's no two instances that are going to be the same. There's no two scenarios that are going to be the same. And we throw a lot of resources at structure fires. So we have a bunch of people coming, and there's no perfect way to assign anybody. So if you're that first in engine company, or you're the first in rescue, or the first in ladder, you assign resources based on what you need or what's going on. So that size up, and it all starts at dispatch. So the information is coming from you from dispatch. You're thinking about it. You size up. Information is coming at you, and if Jason gets there first and there is a search need, there's a known search, he's going to assign me a search if we get there right behind him, because that's what needs to get done. So search is for everybody and anybody, and it's important to make sure you take in that information. There's no perfect way to search. It's based on what the information is coming from you. If you don't have any information, then you go by what the guideline is and how we're taught, close to the fire. But if I always have this picture in my mind, this vision of vent inner search. That's probably the most exciting thing that I could think of could happen on a fire ground. It just happened to some of our guys at 15s that did it, and actually they didn't. They obviously didn't find anybody, but that pucker factor comes in when you have to dive into a window that's puffing out smoke for potential search, and that we talked about searching on the second floor. I think one thing to potentially note is sometimes. We talk about protecting that stairwell with the hose line, but I talk to my driver, because he's not always coming in with me, to maybe look for us on that second floor and throw a ground ladder for a secondary means of egress, potentially. So, like I said, every instance is different. We could talk about all the different potential scenarios all night long, but really it's about the information that starts at dispatch and that comes at you so fast and your size up.
All right, so the last thing that's in this SOG is going to be ventilation. We did a whole ventilation podcast, but since I got two ladder officers here, let's just touch on it again of, when you're deciding to ventilate. You mentioned coordinating with fire tech. What are your other considerations, whether you're going to, do horizontal ventilation or if you're having to get up on the roof and cut a hole?
Lots of things to consider. Once again, always. We talk about building construction. What kind of is it an old home that take longer to burn down, or is it this new construction that takes less than 10 minutes to burn down? What stage in the fire is it at? If it's fairly beginning, based on your size up, based on the smoke and the flame showing, then I'll potentially get on the roof. If it's later in the event, and we're already thinking about potentially going defensive, then we're not getting up there. But there's definitely a time to get up there, and there's definitely a time to not get up there. So I'm thinking about both horizontal and vertical ventilation on pretty much every fire that I go on, and potentials for ventilation. We also haven't hit on the PPV fans yet, and I got a little story that knocks on PPV. I was a driver. I was a driver on Squad 3. Sean Fejer was the Squad 3 captain. We were safety, and we went to a big house fire that was booming on the Charlie side, and a PPV fan was prematurely started on the Alpha side while it was still in the apex of the heat, and it created a smoke explosion that probably was the scariest event of my fire career, where I actually jumped over a wall and thought I might potentially get burned. But I think it's important to recognize that we're not going to start positively pressuring compartments until we have that fire under control. Once we have fire control, PPV fans work great, and we can expel a whole bunch of smoke out of a compartment using them. But prematurely can be very, very, very dangerous, and that knowledge is key. So to not start fans prematurely. So once again, a coordinated event with your pumper and your ladder and everybody on the fire ground, as well as communications. Communications is always huge.
All right. So Joe, I already got your thoughts on it, but Jason, from the inside fire attack, say, you got any thoughts on dealing with ladders and your interaction with them when you're calling for ventilation?
I always try to make that call on the radio that I'm at the seat of the fire. And so when I call for ventilation, I don't have a preference if it's vertical or horizontal or positive pressure or however you want to start helping me get some of this heat and smoke out of the building. I just expect for something to happen when I call for it. So that window is pretty small, especially for vertical ventilation. We have a little bit more leeway with some of the other tactics that we use to ventilate a building. But so it's coordination is key. We were recently on that church with a sub-level over in 3s that burned recently, and it worked very well that I called for ventilation, and Ladder 5 was outside and started taking windows. We talked between ourselves. They started the PPV fans. There was a whole nother crew. So it was like 3 crews working together to ventilate a very large structure. And so it's not about how it gets done. It's just about how we communicate in order to get it done. So I don't have a preference one way or another, but
But you're saying when you say I'm at the seat of the fire, that's like your terminology for
we're here. We're going to start putting water on you. And because as soon as we start putting water on that fire, especially if it's a small compartment, we're going to start feeling all that heat. It makes it even worse. Or if we're there and haven't put water on it yet, sometimes we need a little bit of relief just to start making a push. So it's up to the pumper crews also to make that clear to ladders or whoever's going to be starting the PPV or making these cuts. That's Squad 2. So try to let them know if you're making progress. We're at the seat of the fire. We're fighting fire. We need ventilation. All those things got to be communicated on the radio. These guys can't just assume what we're doing in there.
And I will note that I've learned from a bunch of good driver and operators. Ladder 1 was Eddie Ortega, here James Martinez, where I don't have to think about placing a PPV fan or when he calls for ventilation or he gets fire under control because it's already there. So me and the pipeman might go start doing a 360 and looking for potential ways to vertically ventilate or horizontally ventilate, and then they call for PPV fan, and the fan's already been set up because the driver took the fan off right away, set it at the front door, didn't turn it on because it has to be coordinated, but set it there so it was ready to go.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We're going to go around the room for closing thoughts, but anybody out there listening that wants to get involved in this, again, this is not, this is for the entire department. So if you want to get involved and, share some of your knowledge, just feel free. Like, this is open to anybody. So anybody wants to try to, spread the knowledge, then get a hold of me and we'll make it happen. So going around the room, you guys got any closing thoughts on this topic you want people to know before we wrap it up?
Speaking specifically to some of the newer officers or upgrade officers, I think my advice would be, you're surrounded by good people, and there's a lot of people here that'll support you even if something doesn't go right on your size up. There's a chief coming behind. There's another ladder truck, a rescue. Don't get too wrapped up in trying to make sure that everything sounds right. As long as you're doing everything right, as people start arriving on scene, they'll start recognizing that things are going in the right direction. I think people get so worried about talking on the radio or saying the right thing that they end up fumbling around on things that they shouldn't, because they know what to do, and people in this department know what to do. So it might not always sound as good as we want it to, but as long as things are moving in the right direction, we're making better by the actions we're taking on scene, then that's what we got to take away from it. The talking on the radio, the how you sound, the cadence of what's coming out of your mouth, all that kind of comes with talking on the radio. And the more you do it, the more confident you get. So, don't be afraid to rely on somebody else to help you out. Take some advice. If things aren't going in the right way, there's a lot of people that'll step in to make sure that things start heading that way. So, just for some of the newer ones, don't get too wrapped up about how things sound. Be more concerned with how things look.
I guess my takeaway from this would be that these first in we're talking about first in at an event starts with dispatch. Lots of information when you're en route. Everybody should be thinking about that information, not just the fire officer, not just the driver, but the pipeman. Everybody should be taking in the information and doing their own personal size up. And if, like Jason said, if you're an officer, whether you're experienced or a new officer, you should be critical of yourself. Practice your size ups. I have to practice my size ups because I'm on a ladder and I don't get the opportunity to do very many. So when I do, I'm very critical of myself. And like Jason says, we listen to ourselves, and sometimes we make fun of each other because of the stupid things we say. But that's what you got to do to try to get better and perfect this craft. So I think it's just important that at every level on a fire, everybody should be sizing up and taking the information. That way, everyone's eventually thinking the same thing. And when you're on an experienced crew, sometimes things don't even have to be said because we're thinking the same thing because we've talked about this stuff already. So information is key. Yeah.
My biggest thing for you guys out there listening is get out and train. Get out and train with your crews. You learn a lot about each other's instincts and their tendencies when you get out and train. The crews, everybody knows those crews. They say, man, those guys are always doing it right. We all make mistakes. We all fumble with techniques or tactics, but I'm a firm believer that the great crews make those same mistakes in training where they don't make them on the fires. So if you're not out there training, then you have a better chance of making that mistake on a fire. When we have real things at risk, make those mistakes when we're out training. Don't be afraid to make mistakes when you're training. Use them as learning moments. Make those mistakes before something's at stake. So get out there and train. And if you need help getting started with training, talk to somebody. There's a ton of crews, and that's one of my favorite things about floating Battalion 1 is I get more calls for trucks wanting to go out of service to train. And it's great because I know that down the road when I'm working with them, I know they've done it before. And that's huge. So we can be looking out for each other and we can trust each other. But thank you. Thanks
awesome.
for having us.
Hey, thank you guys. I think this was awesome. So appreciate it. And again, if you want to contribute, get a hold of me. Thanks everybody for listening to the AFR podcast.